All right, thank you again everyone for joining us today for our eFocus series webinar as we discuss fixed assets for Abila MIP Fund Accounting. Our eFocus series webinars are designed to cover relevant topics once a month throughout the year to help you maximize your software investment in Abila MIP. I'd like to introduce you again to June Grove, one of our staff Abila MIP consultants. June has been providing consulting and implementation services for Abila MIP Fund Accounting for more than 7 years. In addition to having a strong background with Abila, he's a certified community action professional, having worked as the finance director of a community action program in the past. And as a reminder, you can use the chat feature to send over any questions as we're going through the webinar, and we'll get a chance to respond occasionally through the webinar, and most likely we'll hit all those after we're done with the content. We are recording the webinar, and we'll make it available to you early next week, along with the PowerPoint presentation. So without further ado, you can take it away, June.
Thank you, Andy. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to eFocus webinar series webinar. Today we're going to discuss fixed assets. And today I'm just going to generally talk about the fixed assets, what it takes to get your fixed assets set up, what steps that you need to in order to get you going and fixed asset and whatnot. So without further ado, let me go ahead and start my PowerPoint presentation. Okay, so use fixed asset module to record, track assets, calculate depreciation and disposal, and generate accounting entry associated with these calculations. So what we're trying to do is try to eliminate the majority of you, and some of you who do not have fixed assets, most likely a lot of you guys have a spreadsheet. So Abila MIP has a fixed asset module that will help you to track all your fixed assets. At the same time, try to eliminate any of those spreadsheets and make it a very streamlined case to track all your items MIP without doing additional journal entries. So in the initial get-go, what you want to do is you want to set up administration of the Abila and the setup. What we're trying to do in the administration is we need to figure out what's the frequency that you want to set up your depreciation. The choices you have is a monthly, quarterly, annually. So those are the different choices. Then you have a gain and loss, GL count codes, default asset types, default categories, and you also have an option to set up an asset entry options, including life, and you can also enable without validating. To go to the screen, you need to go administration in the menu selection, and on the module setup, go to the setup fixed assets. Okay. And here's the more detail of it. Now also keep in mind though is that once you set up an administration and set up your frequency, and once you start your depreciation, you are no longer able to change the frequency. So keep in mind though is make sure you want to set up what particular month that you want to do. Okay, and the gain and loss. Again, what we're trying to look for is the GL in your accounting serve as your loss or gain in account. Also the next two, default asset type and the default category, is an optional field that you do not have to enter any values. But if you want to create a default value for a standard set, then you can populate these two fields available to you. Okay, include life in the asset quick entry. Now this is an activation option that you can allow your accounts payable individual. So anytime they entering accounts payable that hits the fixed assets, then what it allows you to do is the person individually entering the accounts payable will also allow them to enter your asset information. Okay. Now keep in mind though is that tip is that leaving the life option off will ensure the asset has been maintained through maintain assets, meaning that sometimes accounts payable has way too many items to take care of. So the last thing you want to do is give them another additional responsibility. Also, at the time when they're entering the accounts payable, they may not understand some of your depreciation methodology or some of the other rules that you guys put into the system. However, that option is available through accounts payable, but we usually recommend not to turn that on because, again, there was this additional burden on accounts payable and other items, because in the nonprofit world, so sometimes we handle fixed asset and depreciation a little bit differently. Okay. Then also, we have to set up some other information accounting. Again, once we set the frequency and administration of the fixed asset module, in accounting, we have to kind of establish a couple of general ledger counts. We have something called FAO count type. Now, most of you, when we enter the general ledger, we usually say cash accounts, and we also say other liability, other assets, expenses and revenues and whatnot. Oops, let me go back to my screen here. My apologies. Okay, so you would have to create a FAO account type. So pretty much what you do is using the chart of account wizard, and go ahead and follow the wizard and do the creating your general ledger setups. Also, the fixed asset requires you to create a distribution code so that when the system is ready to depreciate and doing the calculation, what you're doing is pretty much directing the traffic of how you want your fixed asset to be charged. Say, for example, we want to go into an expense account, but then you may have a multiple fund in your chart of account that you want to charge off to. So therefore, we have to use a distribution code to set up what particular, and maybe you have some kind of way to allocate your different depreciation based on a certain percentages or certain rules that you have came up with to make that depreciation. So again, though, is you have to have a distribution code to set up in the fixed assets. Now, I will put all this information together where you assign your general ledger account and your distribution. But just keep in mind, though, is that's one of the setup that you have to require to get the fixed asset going. The other item is that you have to create. Now, you don't have to create. Keep in mind, though, is that MIP does come with the standard depreciation method. As you can see here, we have a straight line, some of your digits, declining balance 150%, 200%, and no depreciation. However, if you do not see any of this depreciation codes available to you, then you can create a custom depreciation code to meet your organization needs. So to get to this menu, you had to go fixed assets from the menu selection and maintain custom depreciation code. So again, the system pretty much comes with a value here, but you can go ahead and always create additional field. Then also, if you do decide to create your custom field, the system has a different method available to creating your depreciation code. Now, in this screenshot I have put in here, we have a fixed amount, percentage of depreciable base, percentage of net book value, and percentage of table of depreciation base, and percentage of table of the net book value. Again, this is the different options available to you in the methodology for creating a custom depreciation codes. Now, I'm not going to go ahead and read all this verbatim, but I want to go ahead and put the PowerPoint presentation for a handout. So this is pretty much what kind of gives you more of a detailed explanation of what those methodologies are. So it's again is available to you for a PowerPoint presentation. We'll hand out to you at the end of this meeting. The next thing we have to set up the fixed asset is we have to set up a asset type. Okay, the asset type is a group of similar items that are depreciated with the same method. Say, for example, you may have a vehicle, and then you want to do a straight line depreciation. So you would maybe call vehicle SL, maybe call a code like that. But then maybe you have a depreciation of vehicle, maybe something a little different. Or maybe, for example, maybe you have a vehicle that is depreciating using a different distribution code. So again, you can create multiple different codes to handle the unique requirement in your organization. So I'm going to go ahead and explain to you what those different type and the asset type is in the following couple of slides in my presentation. So again, here's the asset type ID. You enter a unique code for the asset type ID. You are setting it up. Again, you have to be unique. Status, you always make it active as a default status. And again, the description is enter any particular description of what you're trying to do with this asset type ID. Depreciation information. Now this is where we're going to assign the account code. Remember earlier, one of the requirements that you have to do with a fixed asset is create a FAO, or fixed asset account type. Well now, since we created those codes, here now we're going to put those GL code. Say depreciation code is, okay, so this is what the depreciation code you assign. Then you can have an option to put additional switch depreciation code if you want to, saying that, hey, maybe you have a corresponding to a straight line, but then when a depreciation amount exceeds a certain amount, then you want the system to switch to a different code. So again, that option is available to you. Now here's also give us a default coding. Now this is again what's saying assign a GL code and your distribution codes. Okay, so here's the expenditure counts. So you probably want to know, say, cumulative depreciation expenses on the expenditure counts, and then you want your cumulative depreciation count probably in your balance sheet area. And the asset count is your general ledger that you use to track all your different assets. So keep in mind though. Also want to give you a heads up note that your trial balance or your balance sheet, it's not a link together. So one of the key things you have to do is make sure your trial balance matches against your asset list and your asset accounts. Just want to kind of give you a little heads up on that regards. Then next we have a couple of extras. We have something called designation codes. Now we have 4 different options of the code type. We have acquisition code, location, responsibility, and valuation. Now this is the kind of additional information to track your fixed assets. For example, you acquired the acquisition. Well, how'd you get it? Was it a donated? Was it a purchase? Or was it a gift or whatnot, you know? Location, you can say, hey, this particular fixed asset is located in a certain areas. Also, who is responsible for this fixed assets? And the valuation. So let's say, for example, if someone donated, well, how do you know what this, the asset is worth? Say, for example, if someone donated a land, you would more than likely get appraisal from, let's say, real estate or get appraiser. Or if you get a car donated, and more than likely we'll look at the Blue Book value, you know, and to get that valuation. Again, this is just additional information. Of course, if you did purchase it, then it'll be a purchase price. So here's just a simple sample of something I'm doing here. This is an acquisition code I just kind of put in, and I just kind of put the code for PUR, kind of abbreviated. And in the description, I'm just saying what's purchased. It's kind of very basic information that we're kind of putting together. So now keep in mind though, is once we set up all these little details in the background, we'll put it together in the assets. And speaking of assets, here we are. So the last setup item in the entry of your asset is to put in your fixed assets. So to go there, just go fixed asset, maintain asset menu. So now here we are. So here's your asset ID. You want to enter a unique ID. The field is alphanumeric. However, the field length may be determined at the time of your organization database was set up. The most standard asset ID that when the database is created is usually about 25 characters long. Some cases I've seen somewhere as small as 20, but then I have also the customer ask request. They know from the get-go, they know they're putting fixed asset module. So they ask, well, hey, we want 30 or 40 characters long. So again, so it's all depends on how it's set up. Okay, the status of the asset, is it active? Okay, or is it inactive? You know, now if you say inactive when you wish to, you don't want to use on a regular basis, And also, depreciation cannot be calculated for inactive asset. But you can disposal be processed. Just keep in mind that. Okay. Also, I just want to kind of keep staying on the asset category tab, saying, you know, on the status side, you can also put dispose in there. So if you discontinue it, maybe you want to get rid of it. So again, you got the active, inactive, and discontinue or dispose. So those are the three different status that you have. Okay. Again, I'm still staying with the asset tab here because we got a lot of areas that we have to cover. So the description is, what is the description of the assets? For example, GMC 2015 with the VIN number, or something like that, kind of designate that. Or Dell, or Apple laptop, MacBook Pro, or something like that. Kind of give it a unique description to describe what this asset is. And the category. Now, given the category is a free-form field, but once you populate the category, say building, computers, vehicles, and work in progress or something like that, so then you can put the categories in there. Once that is available, and then it becomes a drop-down list for you to see. Tag number. Again, this is purely an optional, so if you tag your assets, and you can put your tag numbers in there. Original asset ID, again, is, let's say, for example, you've been tracking the asset, but then maybe decided to say, well, it used to be this asset, but now we changed it, so you want to put the original asset ID in there. So again, that's purely an optional, but it's not a requirement. Okay. And taxable, okay. Most nonprofits usually is not taxable, so usually have that box unchecked. But again, you want to have that value, okay. Acquisition date, it's like, hey, when did you obtain this? Now, also keep in mind, though, is just because you purchased it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to start disposing it. I have seen cases where people have acquired it, but yet they have not started depreciated yet. So, but also saying this is just the same. When did we acquire this particular item? Now, again, though, when we go to depreciation tab, that's what we'll start telling the system to say when you start depreciating it. But again, though, is acquisition date has nothing to do with the depreciation date. Zero book value, select this checkbox if asset does not have any current book value or does not need to be depreciated. So again, so you want to, if you say, for example, you want to track an asset that's been fully depreciated, but you still want to keep it as a list in your system, but you don't want to depreciate it. And so therefore, now you can put it as a zero book value again. Okay. And then we talked about earlier about the optional designation where we can say acquisition code, valuation code, responsibility, and location. So as you can see, previously we were setting up at different levels of information, but now we're putting all that information together into our asset. Okay. So now we got the asset type ID. Now select the asset type ID. Now remember, we've done this earlier previously. Remember, we talked about the different vehicles or with the different depreciation codes and whatnot. Now this is where we assign a particular asset type for that particular asset that we want to depreciate. So again, though, what I said earlier, we are putting the other items that we put it together. Now we're putting everything into the asset category. So now the depreciation tab. So now we have a different depreciation tab. So use this tab to get the information for cost or cost basis. Enter the price you pay for the asset with the fair market value of the asset if it's donated to your organization. So each additional depreciation information sounds like a salvage value. Remember I said earlier about the asset when did you acquired it versus when you start beginning depreciation date. Okay. So if you put the salvage value here, so let's say, for example, an asset that costs you $10,000, but let's say the salvage value is $1,000, then the amount to depreciate will become $9,000. And then let's say that I put this, even though I say I might got acquired it 2 months ago, but I want to start depreciating now. So you just go ahead and put in the beginning depreciation date. And also the life, okay, you want to say maybe this particular asset has a 5-year life of the asset. So what you really want to do is you want to put in the months. So keep in mind though is that even though you're depreciating, if you do it annually or quarterly, the system wants us you to put it in the months. So that's kind of unique information. You have to think about it. But also the system kind of tells you, hey, you need to put that information in the months. Okay. Now in the historic information, I'm in this category down in the bottom part. So you want this, let's say for example, you are going into MIP fixed asset module and you've been keeping your information on a spreadsheet. So obviously there's some historic depreciation information that we need to bring into the MIP fund accounting. Well, so this is where we will put the historic information in. So let's say, for example, last depreciation date was on May 31st of 26. So you put that in there. Well, how much did you accumulate it since you've been owning that? So you would put that the dollar figure that you've been depreciating it. And let's say that you've been depreciating for past years. So we would say 12 months of a depreciated value that you put in information in there. So that's the historic information as you put in. Now, if it was a brand new fixed asset that you want to depreciate, then the historic information is not required. However, if you're going from a spreadsheet or any other fixed asset and you want to be fully integrated with the Abila MIP fund accounting system, then if you have any past fixed asset, we need to provide a historic information so the system knows to track properly. Then we have in the information tab, again, this is purely optional, but it kind of gives you a lot of additional information that you can populate into your system. You can say, hey, when is the maintenance date? For example, if you have a vehicle or some other items that you need to maintain. What is the replacement cost if you have to replace this? If there isn't a warranty, you can put a warranty information, who was the manufacturer, model number, and serial number. And also pay information, who was your vendor, what particular check or invoice number that's associated with that, and a purchase order number. So that kind of gives you a lot of information that you can put on in this regard to the fixed assets. And lastly, note tab. So if you have something done or you want to track some of the notation, you don't want this particular fixed assets, then you're welcome to put some additional notes in here. So kind of good way to track it versus trying to put in some notes somewhere in a sticky pad or something like that, you know. So we got all the information set up. We have to set up the organization and administration that we want to say we want to depreciate on a monthly basis. Again, I'm just going to base this on what the current system does. We set up all the chart of account information with the fixed asset count type in the chart of accounts. Then we went ahead and created asset types. Then we also put in the acquisition, location, responsibility, and the other values we put in. Then we create assets and enter all your asset information. So now we're ready to depreciate the system. Boy, we did a lot of work putting all this information in here. So depreciation is simply you want to go into calculate, saying fixed assets, calculate depreciation menu. Now, for those of you who like to use a navigator, all you have to do is click on the navigator. Let me kind of switch to a little system over here. So if I go down to the accounting per se and go down to fixed assets, I can go ahead and calculate depreciation. For those individuals, we like to go to the menus, go down to fixed assets, and calculate depreciation. So again, there's a multiple different ways of going about into your system to get the calculate depreciation. But most of the methodology that I've been talking is pretty much going from the drop-down menu and creating a custom depreciation code, asset type, designation, and asset. So, but again, though, if you're using the navigator, it is available in the accounting under fixed assets. Okay. So once you put the calculation ID in, so the system is going to ask for a calculation date. So say, for example, today's June 14th, and you finally decided to get everything done. Okay, it's kind of a little late here now, so, but anyway, we want to depreciate for the month of May. So we want to put the calculation date as of May 31st of 2016. Okay. So again, though, is the effective date is the system already knows, already determined that what the effective date is because of the frequency on the organization that we set up. So again, though, is your fiscal year is on June 30th, and then the system will depreciate entry on the 30th of every month, so to speak. So keep in mind, though, is that we don't have to worry about the effective date because, again, though, it's basically what the system is saying is, hey, I know your fiscal year ending is, and I know what the date to use. So therefore, we'll use at the 30th of the month to get your effective date. The calculation date has no bearing to effective date, but then they are tied together per se, because if you're calculating for May, then the effective date will be automatically sent to May of that information. I just want to kind of give you the heads up in there. Okay. So here's my little example saying create a calculation ID. Then I go down to the select asset from. Now this is what I'm right here. Now we have two choices. I can do there from category, or I can do all assets. Now in my sample, obviously you can see I created a category. So here's my different categories I have in my fixed assets. I have a building, furniture, office equipment, remodel, and vehicle. So what I simply do is I brought it from my available items and go ahead and move it over to selected items. Then once that item is selected, I'm just going to go ahead and simply hit calculate. And that's going to calculate my fixed asset for me. Now let's say, for example, that you calculated it and you made a mistake, or maybe you forgot something. Okay. Well, if you simply hit delete icon, then you can have two options. You can delete the calculated depreciation only, or you can delete calculation ID and calculate the depreciation. Now I would just simply go ahead and just put delete calculation depreciation only and make any necessary changes that I need, and then go and recalculate. Okay. So keep in mind, though, is you can reuse calculation ID. So if you realize you made a mistake, just okay, we can always go back, delete it, fix what the mistake was, recalculate it, and we can just move on from there. Okay. Now, one of the things we also like to do, majority of times we like to just run a report. Now, majority of the times what we would do, the MIP would do reports, fixed assets, then you would look at the depreciation calculation to review it. However, we also have other options in the MIP fund accounting, is review and adjust depreciation available to us. So we can go ahead and look at the different categories. Then we can look at the asset ID. Now, obviously, I have a many months showing up here because, again, I'm on a sample database. But this kind of brings an interesting point that if you do put the information in, say you haven't been depreciating it over the several months, the system will look at that and say, hey, I'll look at the depreciation date. Okay. So also you notice on some of these dates I'm using a 31. Well, again, though, as earlier I said, is that my system is closing on 31st of the month versus the 30th. So again, keep in mind, though, is how the system will put the effective date on it. But since this particular fixed asset has not been depreciated since July or June of last year, so the system automatically picks it up and put that depreciation calculation for you. So this gives you a perfect opportunity to review and make sure everything looks okay. You know, again, this is just something that you can check. Or another thing I said is you can simply run a report, fixed assets, and you can depreciation calculation. I think I would go this way before because I have to go through one by one, unless you don't have too many fixed assets. So obviously you can see over here. So keep in mind, though, is again, this is a sample database. And also notice right here on this one, it stopped at November 30th. Majority of the probably reason is probably that's pretty much when everything got fully depreciated. Just kind of share that information with you too. Okay. Now also, after you do calculate, maybe you have an asset that you want to dispose of during this. Say, hey, you know what? We got rid of something in the month of May. So I want to go ahead and dispose that too prior to doing all my stuff. So again, we acquire some, and sometimes we dispose of it, and we can figure out why. Why do we dispose it? So again, I want to go back to the MIP, and I can say enter disposal, and I can just simply put enter disposal, give it an ID, and then get a particular asset that you want to get rid of. So hopefully I can find a computer there, something. Then you have to say, when did you get rid of it? And say, well, I got rid of it in May, sometimes like that, What was your methodology? Was a sale, abandonment? Was it a like-kind exchange, taxable exchange, involuntary conversion? Not really sure what that means. Was transfer, casualty, or you retired it? And you can put it in a reasoning and expose it in there. Then on the disposal, you can say, well, it was a full disposal or it was maybe a partial disposal. So we have those two different options available to you to do the disposal of your fixed assets. So again, though, we want to try and take care of it because chances are you may get rid of certain items during the month. So keep in mind that that is available to you. Okay. So now, once we have everything all calculated, we looked at our reports and reviewed it, everything looks great. Now what we want to do is we want to transfer the depreciation and the disposal into your chart of account or to your MIP. Okay. So we would simply go ahead and put the session ID. And this, oops, apologize for that. My screen just goes back to, because I keep in mind that I'm trying to deal with different things here. Okay, here it is. Okay, so I'll put the session ID. I'll put JVD. Again, this is a naming convention of the MIP Fund Accounting, saying General Voucher Depreciation. I just went ahead and simply put 05/31/2016, saying that I am depreciating this as of May 31st of 2016. I'm just simply putting the session date as 5/31 and just making a very simple depreciation. Again, I did it again. So let me go back again. Here we go. Okay. And I'm just going to say description is saying May 26 depreciation. Just very basic, nothing complicated. Okay, then once I went ahead to put the transaction information, now I go down to the transfer tab. In the transfer tab, I would go ahead and say select a calculation from calculation ID. Then here's my calculation ID that I used. And then I'm just going to go ahead and from what's available to me, then I'm just going to simply move it to selected items. Now, I have two different types of what way I can do this. I can either transfer in a detailed fashion or in a summary form. Now, my particular, I like to move everything in a detail. And here's the reason why, is that I like to take I can take the detail information and I can always summarize it. But I cannot take the summary information and break it down in detail. So then also I'm going to go ahead and transfer calculate depreciation, any adjusted depreciation, and any disposed depreciation and cost. Okay. So that's pretty much what's available. Okay. So now there's a little shortcut, and most people don't see the screen. Because keep in mind, though, is when you hit this transfer on your screen, well, as soon as you hit transfer, what the system's going to do is it's going to transfer to your accounting, make your entries for you, but it's also same time it's going to post. So again, if you want to see a pre-transfer, then we have this little icon on the top left corner. Okay, so this allows you to run a pre-transfer report to make sure your accounting entry or the transfer the way you want. Now, once you're satisfied with the pre-transfer, then you can go ahead and transfer button in the bottom of the form here. So keep in mind, though, is that I'm going to go ahead and kind of show you in my MIP screen. Go ahead and transfer depreciation. What can I say? Oh, here we go, JVD 0531 2016. Oops. It's kind of hard to type and talk at the same time. Yeah, because I'm already using that. There you go. Then I can do a pre-transfer. See, and what that allows me to do is look at my pre-transfer register. I'm just going to do the detail here. And based on my distribution codes and all the other code, now I could have put some more GL codes in there. Let me just simply do that. I can put the fund, grant, program, department, and this is a sample database I have. And let me change my link a little bit. And I give it a report here. So now we know we put the your asset ID here, but we also know the GL codes that goes along with it. But we didn't put any of this information. Again, though, I just want to show you that our distribution code came with those values based on the individual asset that we signed. Okay, so I just want to kind of show you that. So again, this kind of gives you an opportunity of what your journal entry is going to look like. Once you are satisfied with this entry, then we just simply come back over here and hit transfer on our record. And that should conclude basically your fixed asset. So once again, that pretty much concludes your transferring the fixed assets, maintaining your fixed asset, entering your information, and whatnot. So I would be happy to take any questions if you have for now.
Thanks, June. Yeah, everyone, if you have any questions, feel free to chat those over, and we'll answer those over the next couple minutes here. So we'll keep the line open. I'm going to go ahead and keep the line open for another 2 minutes just to allow for anybody to have any questions. If you want, please just chat those over. Otherwise, we'll be wrapping up here right at 2:45. All right, well, it looks like we don't have any questions today, so I want to thank everyone again for attending our eFocus series webinar as we looked at fixed assets for Abila MIP Fund Accounting. I will be sending out a follow-up email along with a copy of the webinar recording and the PowerPoint slide deck. And look again in the next couple of weeks as we have another eFocus series webinar for Abila MIP around the middle of July. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.